Welcome back to another episode on our channel. The last time we put the GT3 Kline exhaust on the vehicle and the sound was a moderate improvement. But what we wanted to do was add the headers, and the big question was, would the headers make an even bigger difference on the car? I mean, if you heard the exhaust, it just wasn't that loud. I would say 20-30% of the sound comes from the exhaust. 70-80% comes from the headers. This is the 200 cell cat headers from Kline. So we're hoping these will give us a much more needed sound on the GT3, because right now the car just doesn't sound as good as, say, a 458. So follow along this video. We'll show you how to install it and how it's going to sound when it's all finished, with some side-by-side comparisons with another interesting V6 powered car. So our GT3 has been MIA for the last couple of weeks because it's been sitting over here at Porsche Fremont. They were doing some warranty work on the car and getting the car refreshed just in time for Car Week. So take a look at what they did, and I think they offer some great services for the Porsche. So hopefully this is something to help you out. So the GT3 was originally meant to go in for a couple of factory recalls, including software, checking the front and rear windshield glass for adhesion issues, and the fuel filler neck. But while the car was there, they found out the passenger rear rotor was scratched, and that led to looking at the calipers and rotors, and it turned out some debris was stuck in there. So they addressed that issue, and then also we found out the lower brake air duct was broken, as you can see. And here Adrian is showing where the center lock adapter is located in the front of the vehicle. I was asking him about primarily how to remove certain parts, and he was showing me how to use the adapter, how to remove the center cap with a tool, and then of course the proper 3/4 inch wrench needed to remove the wheel. In case you guys are wondering, we're using 600 Newton meters to torque down these wheels with the center lock. So that's what he's showing me here.
So today we're going to be talking about the headers. So last video you guys may have saw, we did the exhaust pipe from Kline. So today we're going to be installing these new things. These ones my dads are super excited about, and we're going to be installing these to make it faster for the Porsche and much more sound. So we're going to do a step-by-step later in the video, and yep, that's all. Bye.
You're probably asking yourself, why am I holding this CarGraphic exhaust controller when the car already has a valve system with a factory switch, right? But one thing I found out was the Porsche, when you switch it to sport mode, the factory valves only open about 1/3 of the way. The rest of it doesn't really open till the car gets moving. So if you don't get the valve controller, when you rev at idle, it's always going to be only barely open. So here we're going to drop the wires for the valve controller down, and there's 2 valves on each side where I pointed to. And then we're going to plug and play with these connectors in between the factory valves. All right, here, so looking at the headers side by side, you got the Kline on the left and the factory one on the right. You can see the OPF material on the factory one is pretty dense. This stuff, I mean, is very restrictive. Here's the Kline one. You can see the 200 cell cat version has definitely a little bit more airflow to it. So hopefully the thing's going to sound a lot better when we get it in the car. The fun fact, we got the stock header here next to the Kline header. If you notice the flanges, it's 6 millimeters thickness on the stock one and 8 millimeters on the Kline one, which is a little bit more beefy. We were worried that the studs were not going to be long enough, but it seemed like it was okay. One of the beauties of the Porsche is, because the engine's in the back, once you yank that rear diffuser off with a couple bolts, you're left with this. The header is pretty easy, couple bolts on the top, 1 clamp, a flange, and then the whole thing comes off. Definitely an extra set of hands is helpful here. As you can see, we're holding it while the last bolt is being removed, and then it just comes right out. You just got to take your time to take the O2 sensors off prior to pulling it off, obviously. And here you can see what it looks like with it off. All the studs are exposed right there. So this is for the passenger side. We're going to get the other one back on. Here you can see the 2 bolts for the flange that is transferred from the factory header over to the Kline piece. It's nothing more than 1 bolt that you can see going through the flange itself. So you just transfer this whole bracket over, and this bracket are the 2 screws that later will attach back on. So you can see when it's attached, they just have 2 bolts that hold the header in place on the back side. So you got the actual header bolts, and then you got these 2 bolts that hold the back of the flange. So up here you can see the flange section. So there's 1 massive clamp that holds the 2 collectors together. We're going to tighten it here, get that bolt in nice and tight. One thing to note is if you, besides the bolt, here's the flange bolt itself, you have the two nuts over here that hold the rear section of the header. This is that flange section that we showed you earlier. And here you can see the header bolts itself. All of these should be torqued down to 29 foot-pounds, I believe. That's what the rating is for these bolts. So make sure you take your time and torque each of these bolts down properly. One thing to mention is there are two O2 sensors on each header. We didn't show it in the video, but you definitely want someone just to hold the header in place while you attach the O2 sensors first, because it's hard to reach it after you bolt the headers in. So make sure you get the O2 sensors in, then bolt the headers up, and then you should have no issues. All right, so here you can see John using a metal tool. We're just fishing the wires from the top of the car through the car to the bottom. The reason we need to do this is we got 4 plugs. These 4 plugs need to plug in between the 2 valves on either side of the exhaust. And once that's done, we'll tidy up all the wiring, zip tie it away from the heat shields, and then we'll be ready to go. So this is where we hit the controller. So how many guys does it take to put the rear diffuser on? Extra hands are always helpful. We're just putting the final bolts in and then we're ready to test out the car. All right, fellas, this concludes the installation of the exhaust manifolds on the GT3. If you watched up to this point, you can see that the installation was pretty much just a bolt-on affair. Everything just goes right on. We put the diffuser back in, the CarGraphic controllers installed. So now the last part, the most important part, is how does this whole thing sound, right? So let's get on the road and we'll let you hear what the new exhaust manifolds sound like at idle, on the go, as well as at wide open throttle. So here we go. All right, so guys, we're in the car. It's fired up. Windows are up. This is a 200 cell CATS with the Kline exhaust. We got the valves open. So we're gonna drive for a little bit this way so you can hear. There's not much drone. The car is noticeably louder inside the car. So let's get going and you can hear this thing. So we're in first gear. We're gonna take off. Chose the 200 cell CATS is because it passes smog. There's no issues with the smog, no check engine light. So this is the reason we picked this particular system. I'm going to roll the windows down so you can hear what the windows down sounds like. This setup is noticeably louder than stock, but it's not not annoying. It doesn't drone much. And most people that buy a GT3, they want the car to sound good. They're not going for quiet, otherwise they'll be driving a Prius highway in a little bit and you can hear what it sounds like on the highway. One of the benefits of this system is it's a direct bolt-on system. O2 sensors, your cats, everything is still on the car. No check engine lights, and you can keep your stock cats or stock manifolds with the OPF. Don't try to, hammer it out or do anything like that, and you get the best of both worlds. All right, so we're gonna get up here on this road here. We build a little more speed, and we'll get on the highway so you guys can hear what it sounds like. Second gear. That is noticeably louder than stock. I think we lost a little bit of the high-pitched sound that the factory system had. Now it's a lower, deeper, garble type of sound. So you saw the video earlier when it was an idle. It's almost a little bit muscle car-like. So you lose a little bit of the high-pitched side, but you gain it back in volume and just more of that grunt. Well, this brings us to the end of another video. We hope you loved the sound of the headers with the exhaust on this 992 GT3. One thing, if you notice, the car in the middle of the video changed wings to a bigger carbon RS style wing. So look for a future video on how to install that wing. But for now, that's the end of this one. So enjoy and see you next time. Bye-bye.